Hello and welcome to the Renaissance Polymath. I'm your host, Toby Gagnon, and on this episode, I would like to discuss my COVID experience. Let's go ahead and get things started. Yep, I caught it. I had it. I fought it. Thankfully, I'm still here and able to tell my story. The purpose of this episode is to detail my experience, including how I caught it, why I caught it, what symptoms I experienced, how I treated them, how long they lasted, how long it took me to completely recover, if I would have done anything differently, and what would I recommend for anyone else going through it. To fully understand my experience, we need to go back to the beginning of 2021. I had my annual checkup, and my primary care physician and I had a good, candid conversation about COVID, the vaccinations available, their efficacy, their side effects, and my likely chances of survival should I contract the virus. At that time, I was told that, given my age and current health, I would likely be strong enough to fight the illness and its symptoms. I chose, based on this conversation, research, and firsthand information from the ones that I trust, to not get a COVID vaccination. Fast forward many months, and my wife got what we believed at the time to be yet another case of strep throat. This diagnosis prompted the scheduling of surgery to remove her tonsils. A surgery which, at any age above the teenage years, is usually very painful and difficult to recover from. With that behind us, she began to get better and was completely back to normal in less than a week. I didn't think twice about it. The weather changed and got cold, then hot again, and cold again, and there was yard work and seasonal preparations to be done around the house. I lost myself in all of the work that needed to be done. Then on a Thursday, I woke up with a slight cough, nothing more than a tickle in the back of my throat. With the weather change and all the outside work I've been doing, I chalked it up to light seasonal allergies and decided to take an allergy pill to stifle the annoyance. Later that same night, however, the muscles in my back began to seize. Again, nothing new to me as I've been fighting back problems since the age of 14. Muscular, thankfully, and not skeletal. After dinner, I excused myself to the couch in the living room where I laid on an ice pack to help ease the pain and hopefully slow the spasms. It didn't seem to have much effect. Again, not uncommon for me, and I took some over-the-counter pain medication with my evening tea and went off to bed. Upon waking the next morning, my back still felt tight, but did not hurt as bad as it had the night before. My cough was still present, and I had a pounding headache. I thought the headache might be sinus pressure, so I took some Sudafed. Out of an abundance of caution, I decided to remain in the master bedroom and spend the day watching movies I'd been wanting to watch for some time. After all, I did already have the day off from work, so I should relax and make the most of it, right? As the day went on, my back never really got better. I alternated between the heating pad and the ice pack, mixing in a foam roller and a massage ball. Like I said, back pain and spasms are nothing new to me, and I know how to treat those symptoms. I only left the confines of the master bedroom or bathroom area to eat and get more to drink. At about 8 p.m. that evening, I felt cold and, on the recommendation of my wife, took my temperature. The thermometer said just shy of 101 degrees. Took some ibuprofen, and by 9 p.m., the fever had gone away. Saturday was much the same as Friday, with the fever coming at 11 a.m. as well as 8 p.m. The back pain eased and the day progressed, but nothing touched the headache. Sunday was basically the same as Saturday, except that the back pain was almost completely gone. The slight congestion I thought I felt in my sinuses seemed to have migrated to my chest, and my cough was more wet than before. It was at this point I noticed my appetite had kind of waned over the last few days. I ate normally on Thursday, mostly normal on Friday, but hadn't been hungry nearly at all on Saturday or Sunday. By Sunday night, I had decided to take Mucinex in addition to the Sudafed. This turned out to be a mistake. On Monday morning, the headache had finally gone, thank God. I checked my body battery, which is something that my Garmin watch shows me. It makes assumptions on how well I recharged overnight using a number of sensors, including heart rate, movement, blood O2 levels, etc. Well, it showed it hadn't moved from the night before. In fact, my watch showed that based on the sensor information, I hadn't slept at all. When I checked my heart rate history, the data showed that my heart rate did not dip below 120 beats per minute during the entire night. Yeah, below 120. Didn't go below 120. That scared me. Based on my conversation with my doctor back at the beginning of the year, I had expressed my concern with the rate of myocarditis. In addition, I had learned about the risk of blood clots and AFib, which is another heart condition. Given the concerns and the data available to me, I called and had a virtual appointment with my doctor's office. They told me that a virtual appointment wouldn't do, and they strongly recommended that I go to an urgent care or an emergency room to have someone physically check out my heart and other vital signs. That did it for me, and my wife took me to the emergency room. I was at the ER for a total of 5 hours, but 3 of that was spent sitting in a plexiglass cube in the waiting room, alone. My wife was forced to wait outside, but thankfully we could see each other through the windows, and the weather was beautiful that day, actually. After checking my vitals, taking swabs to test for cold, flu, COVID, and a myriad of other things, and getting a chest x-ray, and a 2-hour wait after that, I was taken back to a room where I was told I had tested COVID positive and that my wife couldn't come in with me. Once again, I was alone. The attending nurse took blood and then gave me a bag of IV fluid. That was the only treatment I received at the ER. Once the bag had been emptied, I was given a prescription for some pearls, as they called them, which are basically just tiny little yellow cough medicine pills, and an albuterol inhaler, and sent home. It wasn't until I got home that I noticed I couldn't smell anything. Though throughout the entire illness, I never lost my sense of taste. Since my wife couldn't come in and be with me at the ER, she had spent that time cleaning and disinfecting the house and getting me more permanently set up in the master suite. When I came home, I went right to bed as I was exhausted from being out and from the IV fluids. For the next few hours, I was in and out of consciousness, and by 8 p.m., my family, they came to the doorway to say goodnight. Of course, I couldn't go hug or kiss them or even really say goodnight. I was secluded, quarantined, exiled. It was right after this that my fever came back, and I treated it with more ibuprofen. Again, it was gone by 9 p.m., and I did not sleep well that night. I was anxious and nervous of what my future held for me. I was scared that I might become a victim of the virus and become another statistic. I think it would have been odd if I didn't feel fear. Tuesday was filled with more of the same. I was treating a fever that popped up at 11 a.m. and again at 8 p.m., like clockwork. My wife brought me my own case of bottled water, which I took to devour along with some Pedialyte. She made me food upon request, but I found my appetite still lacking, and when I did eat, I found it difficult to chew and swallow, almost as though doing that was more movement than my body could handle. Yeah, you heard that right. Chewing physically exhausted me. It was tough to get any kind of caloric intake, but since my average daily step count was between 500 and 700 steps, I guess I wasn't needing for a whole lot anyway. Wednesday was the same as Tuesday, and by Thursday, I had a follow-up appointment with my doctor's office. Virtually, of course. My cough was still what I would call wet, and I could hear crackling in my chest when I exhaled. My doctor gave me an antibiotic as a precaution. Additionally, I wasn't sleeping well at all, and my doctor recommended melatonin, especially given my heart rate issues. I took both Thursday night, and I believe it was the only reason I slept at all. The first real night's sleep, recharging sleep, in a week. Friday was a carbon copy of the days before. Fever still present at 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. Cough still wet. Fatigue still overwhelming. Saturday felt the same, but 11 a.m. came and went with no fever, and then 8 p.m. came and went with no fever. There it was, the 24-hour mark of being fever-free without medication. I felt I was on the mend, finally, after 8 days. I woke up Sunday morning and went downstairs to be with my family. This was the first time I had spent any time with them in nearly a week. The first time I wasn't alone in over a week. I sat on the couch in the corner and was able to watch them, to listen to them, and to be a part of the family again. This did more for my anxiety, my fear, than anything else to that point. It raised my spirits tremendously. As much as I wanted to be better, I was still very much not. I was still coughing. I was still extremely fatigued. But worse than that, I was actually watching my muscles atrophy. I hadn't moved from the bed to the bathroom in over a week. hadn't barely consumed any calories, but thankfully was drinking over a gallon of water a day and yet somehow was still constantly thirsty, and was mostly in the same position. On more than one occasion, I watched as my toes were slowly moving away from my body, as though I was pointing them, except that I wasn't doing that. My calf muscles were tightening on their own, and it hurt a lot. This meant the pain was back. Pain from my calves, up my hamstrings and glutes, into my back, and through my traps into my neck and shoulders. On Monday, I decided to weigh myself, as the person I saw in the mirror was a ghost of what I had been just a week ago. The scale confirmed that. I had lost 10 pounds in 11 days, all while drinking over a gallon of fluid each day to remain well hydrated. I was still not eating much because it physically exhausted me, but I was doing what I could to force food into my body. Additionally, I took to pacing on my back patio, both to get some exercise, I guess you could call it, but also to get some sunshine. I needed to see and feel something other than the inside of my master suite. The rest of the week was much of the same, with my twice-a-day walks on the back patio and attempts to eat more food. By Friday, I felt like I needed to leave the house. I needed to unload my vehicle of the work things for the coming weekend, so I went to the storage unit that I had about 3 miles down the road to do that. 3 miles out, less than 10 minutes there, and 3 miles back. That was it. When I got home, I literally had to nap because that level of exercise, physical and mental alike, wore me out. It drained me. Saturday and Sunday were spent doing what I could to get back to a normal life with my family, including helping around the house with light chores, cooking, entertaining, and the like. In the time it took me to deal with and recover from my illness, it seemed I had forgotten routines, and new ones had been made. Tasks which I normally performed were done by my wife, and doing them had become second nature to her. I felt left out to a degree. I felt like I was in the way at times. Simply put, I felt like a stranger in my own house. And I was, to a degree. This only hurt my mental state, which, fragile as it was during my quarantine in the master suite, hadn't had much time to recover. Monday again, day 19. The first day I woke up and felt, dare I say it, normal. Yes, I was still dealing with being exhausted easily, but my round of antibiotics was done, my cough medicine was gone, and I'm glad to say so was the cough. I was able to get up, shower, shave, cut my hair. Yes, I cut my own hair. I've done so for 12 years. Get dressed in normal clothes, which were now too big for my depleted frame, and return to work. Let me say that I am extremely thankful to the company I work for. They have a tremendous policy surrounding COVID illness and were super accommodating to me. They called regularly to check in, and not just because they had to. They really did, and I believe still do, care. My return to my job was done remotely, as I worked from home for that first week back. I felt stronger, and though I had more stamina with each new day. That Friday, my wife had the surgery to have her tonsils taken out, and that meant I had to play Dr. Dad. With her in recovery, it was up to me to entertain the rest of the family for the whole weekend while also checking in on her regularly. This meant I was forced into the most activity my body had seen in nearly a month. My average daily step count was under 1,000 steps for 18 days. But on that Saturday and Sunday, my steps were over 11,000 and 15,000 respectively. Needless to say, I slept extremely well both nights with the continued help of the melatonin, of course. Rarely are we given an opportunity to immediately repay someone for the nice things that they do for us. Rarely are we able to repay them on the same level as what they provided to us. I was given that opportunity this year. My wife is an amazing person, and even that doesn't do her justice. She is so many things for both me and our family. She's our rock, our emotional support system, our provider, our cook, our fitness coach, our notifications reminder, our daily, weekly, and monthly planner, our caregiver, and unfortunately, sometimes our maid. Sorry, honey. She does all of this regularly, with never so much as a complaint or a bad word. During my time of illness and recovery, she was all of that, but even more. She assumed the roles and responsibilities I normally cover in our house and family. She was my doctor, my nurse, my only guest. She did a wonderful job staying outwardly positive through the entire thing, though I could see that she was bottling her fear and anxiety inside so as to not further incite my own. She was, in a word, extraordinary. I know it's cliche to say this, but I don't deserve someone as truly wonderful and caring as her. Though I'm glad she chose me to spend the rest of her life with, and I will forever be grateful for that. To close this episode down and put a bit of a bow on it, I want to take these last few minutes to reflect on all that I went through, share some thoughts on what I did to fight this thing and how you might be able to do so, and also to play the what if game a little bit. So here's what I took away from my experience with COVID. Of course, first and foremost is that this thing is real and can absolutely be deadly to some. The symptoms you will face will seemingly be ones you're familiar with, but will last longer and likely be more severe than what you're used to. The headaches are unreal, and the fatigue is unparalleled. You will absolutely take longer to get back to what you consider normal than you ever have with any other illness. There may be lasting effects or symptoms that may or may not be noticeable, so you need to get regular checkups and maybe even make them more frequent than usual. The worst parts for me, the worst symptom was definitely the exhaustion. It was unparalleled. Chewing exhausted me. Thinking too hard exhausted me. The most annoying thing was the constant pain. Pain in the beginning with my back, then pain with the cough, and then pain from the muscle atrophy. My back, my head, the headaches, my legs, etc. Everything just hurt. And when one thing stopped hurting, something else started hurting. The most heartbreaking part was not being able to hug or show love to my family or to anyone that I cared about. I wasn't able to have any physical contact with anyone. I didn't want to. And quite frankly, even if I wanted to, I don't know that I physically could have. But the thing that hurt me the most, beyond the pain, beyond the heartbreaking, not being able to hug your family, not being able to kiss them, tell them you love them, was definitely the sense of solitude, of being alone, of only being able to sit or lay and think about being sick and what might happen if I couldn't fight it. But we had a plan. From the start, my wife and I had come up with a plan that we would follow if someone in our family caught COVID. Of course, it evolved and changed as more information about the virus and how to treat it was available. We chose a route of natural and herbal remedies to supplement the Western medicine ones. That meant I was taking extra vitamin C, elderberry, and vitamin D all on top of my normal daily multivitamin. I took ibuprofen when I had a fever and acetaminophen when I had pain. I took my antibiotics and my cough medicine as directed as well. I drank at least 6 bottles of water each day, while also supplementing that with Pedialyte and Gatorade to keep my electrolytes replenished and also to get some calories in my body. I was isolated to the master suite in the house so I could be comfortable and still have access to entertainment like a TV, computer, etc., as well as my own bathroom. I was given my own can of disinfecting spray that I used anytime I touched anything, whether it was the remote, the blinds, the keyboard, a light switch, a doorknob, or anything else. So now, let's play the what if game. If I could go back in time and have the chance to do it all over again, what would I change? Let's start with would I get one of the vaccinations? And the answer is no, I wouldn't. Yeah, being sick sucked. Sucked for 18 days, in fact. But I still trust the established treatments for the symptoms than I do the, let's be honest, experimental vaccination that would hopefully reduce the severity and duration of the symptoms. And let's not forget that part. The vaccine does not prevent you from getting sick, period. Its hope is that it reduces the hospitalization rate, which means it reduces the severity and the duration of the symptoms, hopefully. What would I have done differently before I got sick? Well, I would definitely push myself to be more active, to exercise regularly, to eat more vegetables. Basically, all the same things we tell ourselves after a long day or week or the morning after a long night of drinking. What would I do differently once I got sick? Honestly, not much. I isolated myself early and followed the plan we had in place. The only thing I think I would change is I would not have taken the Mucinex and the Sudafed together, and maybe not even at all. Beyond that, there's nothing I can think that I would have changed once I got sick. What, if anything, have I changed about my habits going forward? Well, I drink more water daily. This one is simple, but is extremely effective. It's amazing what simply being properly hydrated can do for the human body. I'm also working toward being more of a help around the house to ease some of the burden my wife shoulders on a regular basis. I still don't have this one figured out just yet, but I'm working toward bettering myself here. What advice do I have for someone who hasn't yet gone through it or is currently going through it? Drink a gallon of water and a quart of Pedialyte every day. It's that simple. Drink fluids. Don't discount the efficacy of natural and herbal supplements and remedies. Both my doctor and the ones in the emergency room told me to stay on elderberry supplements. That alone should speak volumes. Stay the course and do your best to occupy your mind with something other than being sick. Don't let your mental health slip because you're physically unwell. And I'm going to say that again because it bears repeating. Do not let your mental health slip because you are physically unwell. And that goes beyond COVID. And last, ask for company. You obviously want to remain as safe as possible, but we are a social species, and you will need someone to interact with. Ask for company. I'll close by saying thank you to you, the listener. While being sick and recovering, I was constantly thinking about this thing that we share in the Renaissance Polymath podcast. I wanted so much to stay on schedule and to bring you the topics and conversations I had lined up. You, the listener, gave me something to think about besides being sick, and another reason to fight and to get better. Thank you for allowing me the time to share my story with you. I do this in hopes that it helps you understand what someone you know might be experiencing and how you might be able to help them. Or maybe it will help you prepare for the day when you become sick and have to experience this thing firsthand. Know that you're not alone in this world and that there are people out there who care about you, no matter how secluded you are. Please, please share this episode with someone you know who may need to hear the things I've talked about, or with someone you love and care about so they may have a better understanding of how they can help you if or when you or someone else they care about gets sick. Well, that about wraps up this episode, but I would encourage you to do your own continued research and education as it pertains to COVID and, quite frankly, any other illness. On the next episode, I will be discussing managing your workload, which is pretty on topic considering this podcast has been delayed for a couple months. If you have any feedback, feel free to send me an email at podcast@therenpo.com. That's THERENPO.com. That also goes for anyone experiencing COVID. If you need to reach out and have a pen pal conversation with someone, please do not hesitate to reach out. I would also appreciate it if you left a review wherever you podcast. That helps this show be discoverable to others and helps me understand where things can be improved. Don't forget to subscribe and auto-download new episodes so you don't miss any of the future topics. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.